You often hear it takes 3 years to know how good a draft pick truly was. Some players are elite as rookies and then fade, due to the injuries or just change in circumstances. Some players are late bloomers and find their stride a season or two into their careers. So let's look back at the 2021 draft now that they're almost completed with their third season and see who would be the new and true top 10. As a reminder of the original order of picks in the 2021 draft, the Jaguars selected Trevor Lawrence first overall, followed by Zach Wilson going to the Jets. No, he won't be on this list. And neither will Trey Lance, who was selected third by the 49ers. Kyle Pitts went fourth to the Falcons, and I don't think you'll hear his name again in this video either. Next were a couple high-level wide receivers with Jamar Chase going to Cincinnati and Jaylen Waddle going to Miami. Penei Sewell, the top offensive tackle off the board, went to Detroit, followed by a pair of corners. J.C. Horn to Carolina, and Pat Surtain to Denver. The 10th overall pick was Devonte Smith to Philly, and he's going to remain at that spot in this redraft. So 10th overall going to the Eagles will be Smith. He's had a good career so far with several highs and a decent amount of lows. I think it's just the nature of the Eagles offense where it seems to be feast or famine depending on the game plan. He's on pace to have his second 1,000-yard receiving season in a row, and the Eagles as a team should have a chance at another deep playoff run. Smith in any other draft might be considered a higher pick, but 2021 was the year of the wide receiver, and there are 3 more pass catchers above him in this new top 10. Going at number 9 to the Denver Broncos will now be Christian Darasa, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. In the original draft, Darasa was taken 23rd by the Minnesota Vikings, and he's shown to be a franchise cornerstone in that line. He's got a PFF grade of 84.4 and has helped the Vikings have the third best offensive line when it comes to pass block win rate. He could still use some help in run blocking, but it was good enough to move him all the way up to number 9. With the 8th pick in the new 2021 redraft, the Carolina Panthers select Jaylen Waddle. Waddle drops a couple spots in the redraft, but it's not because of his lack of production. It's more due to the talent level of the remaining players on this list. He's on the way to his third 1,000-yard receiving season in a row, despite dealing with some nagging injuries this season. His elite speed fits the Dolphins perfectly, so I worry about his production in the Panthers' anemic offense. But lucky for him, this is all hypothetical. Waddle put up an insane 18.1 yards per reception in 2022 and was easily the best deep threat in the league for that year. He's back down to a solid 13 yards per reception this season, but is able to still be highly productive on an offense that includes Tyreek Hill. He feels kind of like a steal at number 8. With the 7th pick, the Lions are going to go with defense in this redraft, primarily because the player that they probably would like to have will have already been selected. Pat Surtain ends up in Detroit this time around. Surtain is the best lockdown corner out of this draft, and is probably top 3 in the entire league right now. He doesn't have the interception numbers, but that's primarily because teams just don't throw his way. He was an All-Pro in his second season and only allowed 468 total yards on him in 2022. This season he's allowing slightly more, but that in my opinion is due to a lack of pass rush by the front line in Denver. Detroit has a better pass rush, so he's going to be back to his elite form with this new team. Coming in at number 6, we have the player that Detroit truly wanted, Rashawn St Brown. St Brown is now a Dolphin and will benefit from the offensive play calling that Jaylen Waddle was getting through his first 3 seasons. I think this allows St Brown to break out as a rookie and compete for the Rookie of the Year award. St Brown has shown a propensity for route running and versatility that only one other receiver in this class appears to have. His productivity in Detroit, before we knew they were an actually good team, leads him to rise this high in the draft. Remember, he was originally a 4th-round pick. Even going at 6th overall still feels like a solid value based on his production and high ceiling. With the 5th selection in the 2021 redraft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Rashawn Slater. If you're following along, then you probably realize their original selection at this position has risen up the board and is no longer available. However, I love Slater to the Bengals because he's an elite talent at left tackle, and that is something that this team desperately needed for the past 3 years. Perhaps he loses some talent at the receiving spot, but Slater keeps Joe Burrow upright and healthy longer. Slater's done a great job of keeping Justin Herbert clean in the pocket, despite the recent injury. A great selection for Cincy, and a great move up the board for Slater from 13 to 5. At number 4, we have our first quarterback. Justin Fields ends up in Atlanta, and it's a beautiful homecoming for the Georgia native. The Falcons no longer have to deal with the failed experiment that was Desmond Ridder and can build a roster around their second elite athlete at quarterback in franchise history. To me, it just feels like the perfect landing spot for Fields, and had it happened in the first place, I think both Fields and the Falcons would be viewed in very different light. Moving up to number 3 is the first wide receiver taken in this redraft, Jamar Chase. He was the Offensive Rookie of the Year and has kept that same level of production despite quarterback injuries. His numbers are slightly lower than some of the other guys on this list, but his talent level is anything but. I think he continues to enjoy great success on the 49ers, and they're in an even better position when he gets back to 2023 because they never wasted a pick on Trey Lance. Perhaps they make it to the 2022 Super Bowl and get the win. With the top 2 picks, it was hard to decide the direction I wanted to go. So far, I've been pretty much going by talent and production over any sense of positional need at that point in the team's history. However, I pretty much have the last two neck and neck. So I'm going to use positional value to break the tie, which leaves us with the second pick being Micah Parsons. He's quite possibly the best defensive player in the entire league right now, and on pace to have his highest sack total of his young career. He earned Defensive Rookie of the Year and All-Pro honors in each of his first two seasons. He no doubt will be the same this year. And yet, because all that still doesn't compare to finding your franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is still number one to the Jaguars. I know he had a really rough start to his career, but I think 98% of that can be blamed on Urban Meyer. He received MVP votes last season and made the Pro Bowl. This year, the stats are slightly down, but the win total should be up, and the Jaguars should be on the way to the postseason. All thanks to finding their franchise quarterback 3 years ago.